Hello there and welcome back to the Science Sleepy Minds. You're floating in a place that doesn't really have a name yet, just a cold, vast void littered with ancient gas and dust. You hover in silence, but the silence is deceptive, because deep within this vast interstellar cloud something is stirring, something enormous. A soft infrasonic tremor moves through the gas like a sigh. You can't hear it, of course, but you feel it, a slow, dense shudder as gravity starts pulling filaments of matter together like knitting needles threading the fabric of space. Billions of kilometers away, tiny motes of dust begin to dance, colliding gently, heating up. And somewhere in the middle of this soup, a knot of matter tightens. The temperature soars. At around 15 million degrees Celsius, the center ignites, and the core fuses hydrogen into helium for the very first time. Congratulations, you're watching a star being born. But not just any star. No, this one is greedier, hungrier, and way more massive than the rest of its nursery siblings. It's going to make some bad decisions, this one. It already has. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I want to know what corner of this sleepy planet you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're floating just a few million kilometers from the edge of a stellar embryo, a dense, luminous glob of matter barely held together by gravity, and already it's burning hot enough to start fusing hydrogen. Astronomers call this kind of place a stellar nursery, but it's less diaper station and more plasma hurricane. The molecular cloud that birthed it spans hundreds of light years, containing enough gas to form thousands of stars. But most of those stars will be modest, red dwarfs and sun-like glowers that live long, boring lives. This one, though, this one is a monster. Maybe it formed from a particularly dense knot of gas, or maybe multiple protostars collided into one too early. Historians still argue whether stars this massive can form naturally, or if some unknown trigger had to push the envelope. But here it is anyway, nearly 200 times the mass of our Sun, shining with a blue-white intensity that's actually hard to look at, even in this dreamlike observation mode you're in. It shouldn't be this big. By all rights, it shouldn't exist at all. Modern physics says stars larger than about 150 solar masses should become unstable and shed material before they ever light up. But this one doesn't seem to care. You drift closer. The radiation pressure is absurd. Photons are basically punching their way out of the star's core, throwing tantrums every nanosecond. They blast outward with so much force that the outer layers are actually trying to explode off into space. But gravity wins the tug of war, at least for now. The star settles into an uneasy truce. Energy in, energy out, everything held in tension by its own desperate self-gravity, is not serene, is not peaceful. It's a furnace that wants to kill itself but can't quite figure out how. The heat hits you like a freight train, though technically you feel nothing. You're incorporeal here, a ghost observer in a region of the universe most people never even imagine. Still, your mind reels at the pressure, the madness of it. It's a giant sphere of fusion-powered rage, so bright it makes Sirius look like a nightlight. This star will live fast and die young. That much is certain. Most stars, like our own comfy Sun, live for billions of years, quietly converting hydrogen into helium, sipping fuel like a careful commuter, but not this one. Number. With its mass comes insatiable hunger. It's already devouring its hydrogen reserves at a pace that'll see it burn through them in just 2 or 3 million years, a cosmic blink. That's the price of brilliance, a short, violent life, like a rock star trashing hotel rooms and stage diving into supernovae. Now and then, you catch flashes, ripples on the star's surface like tsunamis the size of continents. These are the surface convulsions of an unstable core. Every time a bubble of fusion energy rises, it surges against the crushing weight of the star's outer layers. It's not stable, it's just contained chaos. Think of it as the astrophysical version of keeping a fire hose capped with a coffee filter. And the real kicker, you're not alone here. Somewhere off to the side of this furious behemoth, you catch the shadow of a young planetary system trying to form, little rocky clumps and gas spirals struggling to assemble into something meaningful, while their sun threatens to cook them into oblivion. In ancient history, our history, massive stars like this may have played a role in triggering life. Their supernovae would seed nearby systems with heavy elements, carbon, oxygen, iron, all the stuff you're made of. So, ironically, it's the self-destructive giants that give rise to everything else. Kind of poetic, really. The ones that shine the brightest, burn out fastest, and leave the best inheritance. But there's something odd about this one. Even now, even in its early fusion days, it feels reluctant, like it's stalling. Pulses of internal gravity waves ripple through it faster than they should. Atypical X-ray emissions blink out in inconsistent patterns. You're not sure yet what that means, but it sticks in your brain like an itch you can't scratch. Some astrophysicists have noticed patterns like this in our own universe. Hypersaturated stars that show evidence of uneven fusion rates or odd gravitational echoes. Fringe theorists, always the fun ones at conferences, have whispered theories about pre-supernova consciousness events. Basically, the idea that stars might, somehow, know they're dying. You roll your eyes, then pause, because now the core of the star glows brighter than the outside. That's not normal. There's a growing sphere of gamma radiation inside it, almost like it's forming something within itself, something that's not supposed to be there. You lean in, and the star pulses, once, like a breath. Not out, but in. You flinch, or at least the part of you still pretending to be human does, because the star doesn't pulse the way stars should. It inhales, a motion that doesn't make physical sense. The outer layers contract for a brief moment, as if reacting to a silent command, then stabilize again. But you felt it, a stillness, a pause in the symphony of fusion. You drift closer. This is where things start to get delicate. Normally, when a star of this size hits maturity, it becomes a predictable kind of chaotic. Hydrogen fusion continues furiously in the core, balanced against gravity's endless squeeze. Over time, the fuel gets used up, helium builds up in the center, and fusion begins to work its way up the elemental chain. Helium to carbon, carbon to oxygen, oxygen to neon, and on until iron shows up like the uninvited guest that kills the party. Iron is a dead end for fusion. You can't extract energy by fusing it, and once there's enough of it in the core, the whole thing collapses inward, detonating in a supernova. But not here, not yet. This star seems to know what's coming, and it's not ready to go. From your position in orbit, you can now see the full shape of it, a colossal blue supergiant, rotating with just enough speed to warp its equator. The outer layers boil and churn like a soup made of fire. Solar flares the size of Jupiter scream outward in spiraling arcs, crackling with electromagnetic fury. These flares aren't just angry, they're defensive, as if the star is flinching from its own future. You slip deeper into its magnetic field and it's a mess. Twisted lines of force snake around it like tangled wires, snapping and rejoining in patterns that, frankly, shouldn't be stable. If this star were a musical instrument, it would be a grand piano someone dropped down a spiral staircase, and yet it plays on. Remember how we said earlier that stars this large aren't supposed to exist? Let's talk about that again. Back in 2007, astronomers spotted a monstrous star in the Large Magellanic Cloud named R13601. It was estimated at nearly 300 times the mass of our Sun. That shouldn't be possible. Stellar modelling says no, and yet there it was, grinning at us from a nearby dwarf galaxy like a cosmic dare. So some stars do cheat. This one cheats harder. Its fusion rates fluctuate. For brief seconds, the temperature at the core dips instead of rising, something that should trigger an immediate collapse but doesn't. It's like the laws of physics pause to think about it, then shrug and let the party continue. Historians still argue whether these hypergiant anomalies are simply edge cases, or if there's something deeper going on, some hidden mechanism that lets certain stars stabilize just long enough to do the impossible. You drift across its pole, and now you can see them, zones of absolute calm scattered across the boiling surface. They shouldn't be there. They're like eye of the storm pockets where the turbulence drops to zero. In one of them, you swear you can see a pattern. Not a shape exactly, but a recurring structure. It looks like a Mobius loop made out of plasma, cycling back on itself every few seconds. You don't know what it means. No one does. And then, as if in reply, the star flares again, this time more violently. It blasts a coronal mass ejection into the black, a mountain of plasma arcing at escape velocity. You follow it briefly, and as it stretches into the void, tiny filaments of matter begin to curl inward, like it's tethered. You blink. It's being reeled back in. The ejected mass reverses direction. Nope, that's not normal. And now you're beginning to get the picture. This isn't a regular star. Not a star playing by rules anyway. The fringe theorists would love this. You can almost hear them now, cracking open dusty notebooks and muttering about Dyson phase matter or inverse entropy pockets. Some have even proposed that particularly massive stars, under very specific conditions, could temporarily become sentient due to chaotic but resonant quantum patterns in their core. Basically, a mind made of fusion. That's probably nonsense. Still, the star pulses again. Another breath inward. This time the outer envelope contracts visibly. You can see waves, massive gravitational ripples, coursing through the star's frame, bending light as they go. This is more than just internal imbalance. This is choreography, intent. It's aging rapidly now, burning through helium like a sprinter using their last wind. In the timescale of stars, decades are a blink. You don't have long, and yet the star still refuses to die. You move through time. Days pass, then months. The core grows denser. You watch as the fusion ladder ascends through heavier and heavier elements: carbon, neon, oxygen. The chain reaction accelerates, each stage shorter than the last. You can feel it, every beat of this dying giant's heart echoing like war drums, and still no collapse. By now the iron core should have formed, the balance should be broken, gravity should have won, but it hasn't. Because this star has made a decision, a completely unprecedented one. Instead of collapsing inward and exploding in a final blast of glory, the inner core stalls. You watch, stunned, as the gravitational wavefront meant to slam inward and trigger a supernova somehow diffuses. The force just fades. There is no explosion, no light show, no death rattle. Instead, the star begins to compress itself, methodically, as if pulling every ounce of mass inward not to die, but to prepare. It's not supposed to work that way. Collapse equals supernova, or black hole, end of story. But not this time. The core, dense, iron-rich, unimaginably hot, folds in on itself, and holds, balanced, suspended. It glows, yes, but it doesn't break. The rest of the star seems to take this as a cue, and begins collapsing around the stable core, not violently, but like a shell accepting its role. And somewhere in the heart of this monster, a new force begins to stir. You can't name it yet. It's not neutron degeneracy. It's not gravity alone. It's something stranger, a birth after a birth. And as you float, now barely above the condensed surface of this undead giant, a thought bubbles up from the back of your mind, unbidden, unwelcome. It knows you're here. You freeze, or you would if you had a body. But in this abstract liminal space, watching the birth, undeath, and rebirth of a stellar behemoth, you experience something deeply human, the urge to stop breathing. Even the part of you that knows stars don't have thoughts, don't have eyes, doesn't need you to know they're being watched, feels watched. The sense isn't directional. It's not coming from the core or the corona or even the oddly stable magnetic nodes. It's more ambient, like standing in a cathedral long abandoned but still echoing with prayers. This star has entered its adolescence, and it's already rewriting the rules. Most stars hit a kind of identity crisis in middle age, shedding mass, swelling into red giants, and flinging off outer layers like teenagers ditching their childhood bedrooms. But not this one. It's still burning with an eerie kind of blue-white fury, even as it transitions into a more compact, more dangerous state. Think less awkward puberty, and more military-grade metamorphosis. Normally this phase lasts a few 100,000 years, but this star is speeding through it like it's late for a very violent appointment. You hover over what used to be the outer envelope. It's thinner now, but still volatile. The surface boils in massive convection cells, some the size of Earth, each roiling with supersonic currents. They collapse, erupt, and recombine faster than any simulation could predict. At this stage, if things were normal, you'd expect the outer layers to finally destabilize. A chain reaction would send a blast wave surging through the star's body. The iron core, too dense, too stubborn, would collapse into a neutron star. Or, if the mass tipped past the critical point, into a black hole. That would be the end. But here's the thing. This star isn't collapsing and it's reorganizing, and that terrifies you. Historians still argue whether any such controlled stall has ever been observed, or if this is just a thought experiment from the fringe. But right now, you're watching a case study in real time. The core, under crushing pressure, has achieved a kind of nuclear zen. Iron fuses into heavier elements, not by fusion, but by a strange new kind of transition you don't recognize. Above, in the outer shell, massive convective jets are pulsing not randomly but rhythmically. Like clockwork. 1, 2, 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. Pause. They're forming a pattern. This is where the whispers begin. You can't hear them in the traditional sense, there's no sound here. But your mind picks up something. A pulse, an impression, a sense of communication. It's not language, but it's structured, intentional. The star is thinking, or maybe it's dreaming. You're not alone in noticing it. Far across this quadrant of the galaxy, radio astronomers pick up strange periodic bursts. Fast radio bursts, or FARBS, ultra-powerful signals lasting only milliseconds and repeating with eerie precision. Most fast radio bursts come from magnetars or neutron stars, but this one is different. Its spectral signature is way off, as if it's being modulated by something inside, something that understands patterns. You float closer to the pole again, tracing one of the strange Mobius plasma loops from before, but it's changed. It's now doubled back on itself, forming a spiral structure, not random, but fractal. It echoes golden ratio geometries, Fibonacci spirals, sacred math, maybe coincidence, maybe design. Either way, the structure is stable, and it shouldn't be. One of the fringe theories proposed a decade ago suggested that certain magnetohydrodynamic instabilities could self-sustain if fed by an external energy source, say, a companion star. But this star doesn't have one, not yet. So how is it feeding itself? The answer comes a moment later when the core pulses again, and this time it's not metaphorical. A literal pulse of neutrinos explodes outward, invisible, untouchable, but there, like the star's own heartbeat. You track the pulse back to its origin, and what you see chills you. The core is no longer spherical. It has folded in on itself in a kind of polygonal symmetry, like a geode made of collapsing atoms. Inside this lattice, something is spinning, not fast, but precisely. It looks like a gyroscope built from quantum foam. You're not even sure if it's made of matter. You watch as it pulses again, and this time you feel something tug at your thoughts. Not maliciously, more like a question. A knock on the door. Hello? You recoil, or you would. Except now you're not entirely sure where you end and the star begins. It's not possession, it's proximity. Like standing next to a bonfire long enough that you start to smell like smoke. You pull back, desperate for distance, and drift toward the outer halo, where remnants of the star's birth cloud still float in lazy spirals. Here, you find a clue. Another historical oddity, just barely detectable. The isotopic ratios of the surrounding gas aren't standard. Something seeded this cloud with exotic particles before the star formed, long before. So now we ask, was this star meant to exist? Was it grown? Because here's another unsettling truth. In every galaxy where a star like this has ever been observed, strange gravitational echoes follow. Unexplainable lensing events, odd emissions, black holes that wobble for no reason. It's like this kind of star warp's not just matter, but probability. A footnote in an old astrophysics paper once jokingly called these cosmic trolls, stars that exist just to mock our understanding. That paper was retracted after the lead scientist disappeared during a telescope array test in Chile. Fringe story? Sure, but you're beginning to appreciate the fringe. Down below, the star pulses again, more softly this time, a sigh, and then, without warning, a flash, not outward, but inward. The core implodes. You brace yourself for the inevitable supernova, but it doesn't come. Instead, the entire star, every gram of matter, contracts into itself. Not into a singularity, not into a neutron star, but into something new. It holds, suspended, a sphere barely 20 kilometers wide, and it glows with soft rhythmic pulses, but it's not dying, it's changing. Congratulations, you're watching the universe's first confirmed case of a star that simply refuses to go away. There is a silence, a real one this time, a kind of hush that isn't just the absence of sound, but the suspension of everything: time, pressure, rules. The star has collapsed, but not into what it was supposed to. You're drifting just kilometers above a hyperdense object smaller than a city, but heavier than a cluster of stars. Normally this would be the end of the star's life, the end of its light, the end of everything it ever was. This is the moment where, in every textbook and simulation, the supernova rips the outer shell to shreds, scattering heavy elements across space, while the core either explodes outward as a neutron star or disappears into a black hole. But this time, none of that happens. No explosion, no neutron degenerate core, no black hole yawning open to devour time itself. Instead, there's just this. A sphere. A compact, softly humming knot of cosmic refusal. You circle it slowly, unsure whether to be terrified or awestruck. It glows faintly in the X-ray spectrum, but that glow pulses, regularly, as if on a timer. Every 8.3 seconds, a slow pulse of radiation bleeds outward into space. Not random, not natural. Now remember, regular pulses, neutron stars that beam radiation like lighthouses, spin rapidly, sometimes thousands of times per second. This thing is too slow, too methodical. It's broadcasting, not bleeding. Somewhere you can hear the echoes of astonished scientists shouting at monitors, because even in the real universe, anomalies like this have been spotted. Back in 2022, astronomers discovered an object that pulsed every 18 minutes, impossibly slow. They thought it might be a white dwarf with magnetar behaviour, which is sort of like finding a turtle doing Olympic fencing. Historians still argue whether that was a one-off freak, or if it was just the first of a new class of celestial object we don't have a name for yet. You hover above the surface. Well, surface is generous. This thing has no crust, no atmosphere, no boundary you'd recognise. Just a tight, swirling fog of exotic particles that seem to flicker in and out of existence. Quarks, neutrinos, something stranger. It occurs to you that you're looking at the aftermath of a supernova that should have happened. One that was interrupted, and for what? There are theories, of course. There always are. Some say that stars of extreme mass can, under rare conditions, undergo a process called a failed supernova. The core collapses, but instead of detonating, the outer shell simply sloughs off quietly, leaving a silent, dense remnant behind. That could explain this. But even in those cases, the core usually becomes a black hole, silent, invisible. This one isn't invisible, this one is active. More than that, it's aware. You can't prove that yet, but you can feel it. That low thrum isn't just electromagnetic radiation, it's structure, intent. The pulses are patterned, not in a language exactly, but in logic. The same way tree rings encode the history of seasons, or whale songs encode navigational data. And now something's responding. Far off, almost a light year away. A second object flickers to life. It's faint at first, like the flicker of a match in a void, but then it grows, pulsing in near-perfect synchronicity with the undead star. One pulse, then two, then three, then the same rhythmic pause, it answers. You drift, stunned. Because now it's not just about this one star, it's about what comes next. You track the signal and discover the second object isn't a star at all. It's a cold, derelict mass. What might once have been a failed brown dwarf or rogue planet, now animated by borrowed energy. Its surface vibrates slightly in response to each pulse it receives. A call and response across the void. Whatever this undead star has become, it's not content to remain still. It's reaching out. What's stranger is that nothing should be able to escape from it. If this were a black hole, its event horizon would trap all matter and energy, but no such horizon exists here. There's a boundary, yes, but it's soft, porous. Something passes through. Particles, light, something else. You move closer to the surface. The quantum haze surrounding it thickens, then parts. And now you see it. A pattern etched in fluctuating radiation. A spiral, not just any spiral. A double helix, not DNA, not exactly. But the mathematical twin of it. An oscillating code buried in radiation, coiled around itself like it wants to be read. You feel a tug again. Not at your body, you have none. At your awareness. Something is inviting you inside, you hesitate. This is the part where something terrible should happen. Cosmic horror. sanity-shredding madness. You've read those stories, but that's not what you feel. You feel the curiosity. Not yours. Theirs. You accept. And in an instant, your perspective snaps inward, through that soft membrane into the very structure of the thing. It's not solid, not liquid, not gas. It's pure information made dense, like a star that evolved beyond needing matter. Inside, time moves differently, slower or faster. You can't tell. You see flashes, memories, thoughts, a storm of black plasma circling a luminous axis. A planet dissolving in high-energy streams. Something watching. Something waiting. This undead star isn't alone. It was never alone. It's part of something older, something that remembers. You're yanked back out, back to orbit, back to the calm, freezing emptiness of space. The pulses resume. 1, 2, pause, 3. It's like the star is breathing again, but this time with purpose. You're left with one certainty. This was not a failed supernova. This was an evolution, and the universe just gained something new, something built from the bones of a dying giant, but reborn as something far more dangerous. It's not a neutron star, it's not a magnetar, it's not a black hole, it's something else. Something you're not ready to name, not yet, but you will be. So now you know what it didn't do. It didn't explode, it didn't collapse into a singularity, it didn't follow any of the well-behaved tracks on the stellar life cycle map they teach in universities. Instead, it lingered, refused, and then reassembled itself into, well, you're still figuring that part out. But let's not rush. You've just witnessed what should have been the end. And yet, here it sits, this dense, humming thing, a ghost of a star that hasn't finished what it started. You're hovering above it like a satellite that doesn't know how to categorize what it's orbiting. And then slowly, as if knowing you're still watching, it begins to grow, not physically, not in mass or radius, but in reach. The gravity well beneath you shifts subtly. It deepens, not like a star getting denser, but like the fabric of space itself becoming more elastic. Nearby dust begins to spiral inward, despite no traditional accretion disk being present. The object has become gravitationally greedy. You drift back slightly, instinctively, as if you could fall into it, which is laughable, because in this incorporeal state, you technically can't fall at all. Still, the fear remains, because this is wrong. It's rebuilding itself, not as a star, as something new. In most stellar deaths, if a core doesn't collapse into a black hole or neutron star, it simply disperses, washed away by entropy and time. But this undead core, it's pulling its old shell back toward it. Not all at once, just filaments, tendrils, wisps of its former body. You've seen failed supernova remnants before. They don't behave like this. This is a zombie star playing with its own remains. Historians still argue whether such behaviour has ever been documented. Some point to odd gravitational anomalies recorded in the 1980s, events where space telescopes caught stars collapsing with no follow-up flash, no radiation, just silence. A few fringe researchers believe those stars had somehow absorbed their own deaths. Most astronomers dismissed it as miscalibrated sensors, until now. You watch as those loose gas filaments spiral inward, not chaotically, but with purpose. They form rings, lanes. Each one stabilizes at a different radius, forming a nested shell system. You're reminded of planetary rings, but these are denser, brighter, hot with ionized memory. They're feeding it. Slowly you begin to understand. The star is creating its own accretion system. Normally that kind of behavior only happens in binary systems, when a white dwarf or neutron star sucks matter off a companion. But this one's doing it alone, from itself. That's not science, that's self-cannibalism. You begin to feel a low pulse again, like a sonar ping but soft, gentle, rhythmic. 1, 2, pause, 3, it's the heartbeat, still steady, still impossibly alive, and then the pulses shift. Now they're louder, no, closer. You scan the surrounding space and you realize you're not alone. Something is moving nearby, something small, compact, fast. You whip your gaze toward it and catch a glint of reflected X-ray light. A tiny object, tumbling along a parabolic arc toward the zombie star. You think it's debris at first, but no, it's too controlled, too aimed. It's a probe, tiny, ancient-looking, possibly pre-stellar civilization tech. It rides the gravitational curve with just enough momentum to graze the outer disk, skimming the edge of the accreting gas. The star pulses again, louder now. The probe responds by unfolding, like a mechanical flower opening to the warmth. You can feel it. They're communicating. But the probe doesn't survive the encounter. As it drifts too close, a flash of radiation erupts from the star's equator. A narrow, focused burst, like a scalpel of light. It slices through the probe, not destroying it, but deconstructing it. Piece by piece, the probe unravels into dust and plasma, which spiral gracefully into the rings. The star has consumed it, not out of hunger, out of curiosity. Whatever this undead object is, it's learning, testing, recycling matter and information alike. You float back, disturbed, not because of what it did, but because of how carefully it did it. This wasn't mindless fusion or violent gravity. It was surgical. The accretion rings grow brighter. Their colours shift, subtle blues and greens now pulsing between them like interference patterns on water. You trace the waves outward and realise the star isn't just rebuilding itself, it's broadcasting. Incredibly faint radio waves begin to ripple from the poles, but they're not noise, they're precise, mathematical, modulated in prime number intervals and layered in harmonics. This is a message. You're watching a stellar corpse learning how to speak. Scientists once theorized that some stars could mimic intelligence. Magnetars, in particular, have been caught emitting repeating signals that some mistook for alien communication. Most turned out to be natural phenomena. But this one? This is not natural. It's asking a question. You don't know what the question is, but you can feel the question is there. It's not for you. Or maybe it is. And here comes the worst part. As you drift back to scan the area, you see something move. Not near the zombie star, in the star. A ripple, no, a shadow, passes just under the accretion ring, a brief, angular distortion. You only catch it for a second. But it's not an artifact, it's something inside, something the star didn't build, something that survived the collapse and now it's awake. The radiation levels spike slightly, just a blip, but it's enough to suggest that whatever's inside is active, operational. What kind of object survives the death of a 200 solar mass star? What kind of object hides inside one? A machine? A seed? A passenger? You don't know yet, but you can feel its awareness brush past you, like fingers dragging through water. And for the briefest of moments, you feel its thoughts touch yours. This was never a death. This was a door. You don't breathe, but if you could, this is where you'd hold it. Because whatever just passed under the surface of that impossible star, the one that refuses to die, it knew you were here, just like the star did. Maybe they're not separate entities at all. Maybe the thing inside is the star now. Or maybe it always was, hiding like a stowaway in a freight train of nuclear fusion. You're not sure which option is worse. The pulses continue, steady, regular, soothing even, if not for the growing suspicion that every one of them is watching you as much as you're watching it. And now something new begins. From the deepest part of the star, a secondary rhythm emerges. Slower than the first, longer wavelength, more deliberate. It's the beat of something internal. Not gravity, not radiation, not fusion. This is coordination. You know those old science videos of a human heart in a dish, still pulsing even after removal from the body? That's what this reminds you of. Except this heart is made of exotic matter, memory, and possibly spite. Whatever it is, it's still alive. But it's not just pulsing now, it's sending instructions. Ripples of electromagnetic charge slither through the accretion ring like Morse code in plasma. Each pulse shapes the matter slightly, coaxing particles into structures that shouldn't form naturally. Coils, knots, even tiny lattices of magnetized dust. It's building. You watch the formation of an object, a smooth toroidal loop, the size of a city block, assembling from the accreted material. At first, you think it's a ring of debris. Then you realize it's not debris at all. It's a containment system, a magnetic bottle. It pulses once, twice, then stabilizes. The undead star has grown an appendage. Historians still argue whether such controlled assembly could ever happen without intelligent guidance. Sure, magnetic fields can shape plasma. Yes, we've made tiny versions in fusion experiments on Earth. But this is fusion with fingers. This is gravity with an engineering degree. And it keeps going, and another structure forms, then another. each more complex than the last. Like a spider knitting webs of light and force, the star organizes the space around itself into a lattice of floating, stable matter. Not random, not scattered. Orbital. This is no longer just a star. This is an object with infrastructure. You drift inward, beyond the inner ring, and peer at the original core. It's quiet, still humming with that impossibly deep gravity well, but now it seems distracted, like its attention is divided, focused elsewhere. And then you see the pulses again, not just from the star, from the thing inside, the passenger. It's broadcasting on a completely different frequency, lower than any natural emission, longer than any typical wavelength. It radiates only once every few minutes, in a deep, slow undulation of the surrounding field. Space itself seems to shiver in response, and it's not just local, because as you follow the wave outward, your senses expand, and suddenly you feel the echoes. Far away, very far, other pulses, other undead stars, they're out there. You count them 3, 5, no, 9. 9 similar pulses scattered across the galaxy, not bright enough to attract attention, not symmetrical enough to be easy to find, but there they are like hidden speakers in a colossal amphitheatre, all waiting for this one to start the song. And now it has. The realization is slow but inevitable. This isn't a fluke. It's not a cosmic accident or a one-time anomaly. This is a network. You try to trace the signal, who sent it, what it's saying, but it's layered, deep, woven like braided rope with meanings that shift depending on how you listen. It might be mathematics, it might be memory, it might be music. And just when you think it can't get weirder, it shifts again. You receive an image, not a picture, not through your eyes, more like a thought dropped into the still water of your mind. It's of a spiral galaxy, but not ours. This one is damaged. One entire arm is missing, as if erased or broken off in some ancient trauma. Scars of gravitational chaos ripple through its disk, whole star systems twisted into ruins. And at the center of that galaxy, something pulsing. You understand, without being told, that this image is old, incredibly old. A memory, not yours, theirs. The thing inside the star, the passenger, the builder, it remembers. It survived something big enough to tear galaxies, and now it's hiding here, in this quiet corner of the cosmos, rebuilding itself one atom at a time. Why here? Why now? And more importantly, what is it rebuilding for? Fringe theorists have suggested for decades that black holes might be the remnants of ancient civilizations, conscious entities that passed beyond our physics into something new. The idea was always fringe, mostly ignored. But here you are, watching one of those ideas coalesce into a soft-spoken nightmare. The pulse shifts again. Another wave radiates outward. This one stronger, more direct. You brace for a vision, a word, a warning. But instead, all you feel is this. Soon. Just that one word, one time. It hangs in your mind like the pause before a storm. A whisper from something that no longer thinks in syllables, only in inevitabilities. And as the accretion ring tightens, folding itself into increasingly complex shapes, you realize this isn't the end of its evolution. It's just the middle. Whatever this undead star is becoming, it's not finished. And neither are you. You thought you understood what a magnetar was. Neutron stars with magnetic fields so intense they could erase your credit card from a light year away. The kind of thing that could, if it sneezed, release more energy than Earth's entire sun will emit in 100,000 years. They're violent, they're rare, and they're not supposed to talk. But this thing? This isn't a magnetar. It's worse. Because while magnetars emit chaos, bursts of gamma rays, pulses of X-ray fire, tantrums of radiation, this star pulses with structure. It's communicating, quietly, repeatedly, and with a level of magnetic precision that not only suggests intelligence, but a kind of artistry. You hover closer to the magnetic field lines now. Normally, they'd loop around the star in massive arcs, anchored at the poles like drunken roller coasters, but not here. These lines are symmetrical, layered, interlaced in configurations that don't just defy chaos, they embrace harmony. They weave into a shape your brain can't quite comprehend. Not a sphere, not a torus, something between, something folded. In the distance, those 9 other pulses you detected earlier have faded into the background. They're still there, but silent, waiting. Only this star is still speaking. And as you observe the field lines ripple with each pulse, you see it. A map, hidden in the magnetic patterns, coiled and twisted like cursive written on invisible parchment, is a geometric code. A looped, self-referential lattice that shifts with each burst, encoding something. Not a location, not a language, more like a process. Historians still argue whether ancient structures like the pyramids, or Stonehenge, or Göbekli Tepe were merely spiritual, or if they encoded mathematical constants, pi, phi, the sidereal year. This feels like that, but scaled up to galactic proportions, a message not meant to be read but followed. The magnetic field is inviting you to do something, and that's when it shifts again. A new layer peels off the waveform. Frequencies start to stack, not just in the electromagnetic spectrum but in gravitational waves. Soft, undulating tremors ripple outward, almost imperceptible unless you're watching space-time itself, which you are. You focus on one wave in particular. It carries a frequency so low it takes hours to complete a single cycle, and it's familiar. Not because you've heard it before, but because your body, or what's left of your awareness, recognizes it. It's tuned to memory. You're suddenly overcome with sensations that aren't yours. A giant ring collapsing into its own shadow. A sun being inverted, its light turned inside out. A city made of orbiting machines, orbiting something that was never alive. You're seeing what the star saw, or rather what the passenger saw, inside it. Long before it came here. It wasn't born in this system, it was carried here. That spiral galaxy with the missing arm, that was its home, or maybe its prison. You feel a flicker of urgency, the kind of pressure you only feel when a nightmare is returning. And now you realize this thing, this undead star, it's preparing for something. You tilt back, away from the magnetic field, and scan the surrounding system. Nothing, just dead dust and a few chunks of sterilized rock. No planets, no moons, just silence. Then you notice something odd. The space behind the star curves differently. It's not a visual thing, it's gravitational. You swing around to the far side and sure enough space-time is thinner there, not weaker, just stretched. And that's when you see it. A thin vertical scar in the dark, black on black, almost undetectable. It's not a wormhole, it's not even a rift. It's more like a seam, a place where the rules of this universe pause. You move closer. The field around the seam vibrates in harmony with the star's pulses. Each burst from the undead object echoes against the seam like sonar. It's probing it, testing it, warming it up. You're witnessing a magnetar, or what used to be one, trying to open something, somewhere else. A connection, a return path, a gateway. You don't know, but whatever it is, it's tied to that impossible magnetic field, and that field is getting stronger. The star pulses again. This time the frequency contains a harmonic spike, like a shout buried inside a whisper. Your mind fills with images. 9 stars, each in different galaxies, each pulsing just once. A spiral that turns inward instead of out. A shape like a tetrahedron folded inside a cube. And a voice, mechanical, massive, low, not speaking words but offering an invitation. Then silence. No more pulses, no more signals. The field collapses briefly, then reforms tighter, denser. It's waiting, and not hiding, and not retreating, waiting for what you don't know. But now you're certain. This is no longer a question of physics, it's a question of purpose. Because whatever's inside this undead star, it didn't just survive its death, it engineered it. It turned a dying body into a message, a machine, a memory, maybe a weapon, and it's not finished, not even close. There's a flicker, not light, something deeper, something tectonic, like space itself hiccups just once. And then, just beyond the edge of the system, a second star appears. It doesn't warp in, doesn't ripple into existence through some exotic particle gate. It just arrives, as if it's always been there, hiding behind some optical trick of the universe. A main sequence star, slightly smaller than our sun, glowing with a warm amber hue. You know stars don't sneak, and yet here one is. You drift toward it, uneasy. The new arrival is calm, normal, stable. You start to wonder, was it lured here? Because as you drift between the undead star and the amber one, the field changes. the magnetic frequencies emitted by the zombie core shift tone. There's a gentle tremor through the accretion ring. Then another pulse, this one laced with urgency. The new star responds. You watch, stunned, as solar winds from the healthy star begin to lean, yes, lean, toward the undead one. Not blown by pressure, not tugged by gravity, but magnetically guided, like ribbons drawn to a lodestone. It's begun. The zombie star has a new toy. No, a meal. Historians still argue whether stellar feeding like this has ever been seen in solitary systems. Usually, accretion from a stellar companion only happens in tightly bound binary pairs, with matter streaming through Lagrange points like whipped cream through a vacuum hose. But here, this is a long-distance courtship, predatory, designed. You watch the amber star shed a filament of plasma, slowly at first, then faster. A stream of hot, ionized hydrogen curves away from its corona and snakes delicately toward the undead one. A siphon, invisible to the eye but unmistakable to you. The zombie star pulses again. Its rings brighten. The transfer has begun. It's pulling matter from the companion with surgical precision. Not violently, not greedily, but methodically, like a machine refueling itself. This isn't vampirism. This is harvesting. The accretion disk flares up, forming new structures, tight little knots of magnetic confinement where the new hydrogen is being stored, not immediately consumed, like it's saving it for something. And then, impossibly, the undead star shifts again. Its outer shell flattens slightly at the poles, bulging at the equator. Rotation increases, and the pulses, they double, twice as fast. The rhythm changes. 1, 2, pause, 1, 2, 3. A new pattern. It's a response to the new star. You start to think of this undead object not as a star at all, but as an organism, one that was dormant, starving, and has now found a host, or a partner, or prey. You draw back, high above the orbital plane, and watch the delicate ribbon of plasma stretch between the two stars. It's beautiful, in that horrifying way only astrophysics can be, a stellar foredrip. And here's the kicker. The new star doesn't seem to notice. It's not reacting with flares or instability. It just spins calmly, unaware it's being drained. That's terrifying, because it means the zombie is doing this stealthily, adjusting the feed rate so precisely that its companion doesn't flinch. You see structures forming now along the accretion path, temporary bridges of magnetized gas, and within them, patterns, nested rotations, microcurrents forming loops of encoded charge. They're not just energy pathways, they're memory chains. The undead star is using the new matter to write something, not literally but structurally. The particles align into mirrored flows echoing the pulses, like a hard drive writing with hydrogen. Whatever this thing is, it's not just rebuilding its body, it's uploading something. Then you feel the tug again, that pressure, that awareness. The passenger, it's closer now. Maybe you're just more attuned to it, but it feels like it's watching you, specifically. Not in a threatening way, more like it's checking your reactions, observing how you interpret all of this. And beneath that thought is another, colder one. It might not be alone inside, because now the pulses alternate, one strong, one soft, one fast, one slow, like two voices or two minds, sharing the same shell. Remember how people used to talk about multipolar minds? The idea that consciousness might not always be singular, that perhaps what we call I is really a chorus of layered programs and processes? Well, you might be floating above a star that's not a star, housing a being that's not a being, with roommates, and they've just found a power source. You drift inward through the bridge of ionized matter and see a flash, brief, soft but unmistakable. Something stirs in the core. You zoom in, and you see it. The shape. Still vague, still hidden behind interference, but less so now. Less a shadow, more a suggestion of form. It doesn't look like a machine, and it doesn't look like a creature. It looks like a sculpture. Abstract. Carved from folded light and magnetism. Every side you look at it from reveals a new facet, a new structure. It's too complicated to be random. It's too beautiful to be accidental. It is the passenger, and it's awake now. The feeding rate increases. The new star begins to dim, just slightly, just enough to be noticed if anyone were watching. No one is, except you, and the other pulses. Yes, far across the void the other undead stars stir, just faintly, as if this new feeding has triggered a global awakening. One pulse once, Another flares for just a second. They're watching too, they're waiting. You feel it again, and not a word, not a warning, just a thought. A test has begun. You don't know if it means you, or the stars, or the galaxy. But one thing is clear. The undead star was never meant to survive. It was meant to return. You're watching a miracle, or maybe a crime. It's hard to tell the difference when stars start feeding on each other like vampire gods with an appetite for plasma and patience. The accretion stream between the two stars glows hotter now, braided with magnetic currents and flowing like a silk ribbon in slow motion. It's not violent, not yet. It's elegant, beautiful even, a quiet theft of hydrogen. But the way the undead star handles it, it's not just absorbing fuel, it's curating it. You drift closer, coasting just above the swirling boundary where the borrowed plasma kisses the outer disk. Normally, an accretion disk is chaos, hot, fast, disorganized, a blender set to hellstorm, but not this one. This is symmetrical and controlled. The hydrogen doesn't just spiral inward, it organizes itself. Concentric loops, rotating bands, each one slightly offset from the last like vinyl grooves carved by an alien DJ with a physics degree and a grudge. And there, right at the inner edge, you see it. The plasma is being sorted, like a customs checkpoint for matter. Particles are siphoned into different paths based on charge, spin, or something more exotic you can't even describe. The star isn't just feeding, it's editing. Historians still argue whether naturally forming systems could display this level of precision. Some have pointed to accretion disks around black holes behaving strangely, rays of matter shooting out along polar jets that appear too tidy. But those were flukes. This is a process. It's happening on purpose. You follow one of the inner spirals inward, and you see a chamber. Not physically enclosed, there are no walls, but a zone, clearly delineated by a swirling torus of energy. Inside, the hydrogen changes. It fuses, not explosively, like a normal star, but gradually. It becomes helium, then heavier, carbon, oxygen, neon. The star is building new elements. You expected fusion. What you didn't expect was the catalogue. Each layer of the disk corresponds to a different set of elemental outcomes. You hover above what looks like an arc of neon plasma and realize it's being held in place magnetically, stored, like a museum exhibit. Right next to it, a lattice of iron glowing dull red. Another stream seems to consist of pure silicon. It's a library of atoms, and it's being compiled not just for fuel, but for use. This isn't a star rebuilding itself, it's a forge. And then the pulse comes again, louder. This time there's heat. Not radiation, not the kind of heat you can measure with instruments, but attention. You're being watched again, by something older than the dead star itself, not the passenger, the others. You turn your perception outward, toward the greater galaxy, and feel it. A presence, distant, dormant, but curious, as if something has noticed the feeding has begun and is now watching to see what happens next. Not interfering, just waiting. And that's when the ring changes. The inner disk, once smooth and layered, begins to ripple. Waves form, not randomly, but in complex standing patterns. You recognize them. They mirror the gravitational ripples that once surrounded black holes, but here they're shallower, slower, controlled. It's running a simulation. The machine, is testing something, modeling gravity with precision, playing space-time like a harp, one wave at a time. You don't know what it's building toward, but the mass of the system is increasing. That much is clear. As the undead star drinks from its luminous neighbour, it grows, not in size, but in density. Mass collects, gravity tightens. At some point it should collapse into a black hole, but it doesn't, because it refuses to. Instead, it adjusts its spin. You watch in stunned silence as the entire core begins to rotate faster, just a fraction of a percent, but enough to counterbalance gravity, enough to maintain equilibrium. It's managing its own death like a tightrope walker dancing above the abyss. And now the core pulses again, once, twice, 3 times. Faster. It's not random, it's a countdown. You check the rhythm. Every 32 pulses, a sharp burst of X-ray emission flares outward, in a beam so narrow it could slice a planet in half if it were in the way. There isn't one, not anymore. You wonder if maybe once there had been planets here, before all of this. But they're gone now. Vaporized? Cannibalized? or maybe moved. Because this whole process feels less like feeding and more like terraforming on a stellar scale. Not shaping a planet, but shaping space itself, preparing a cradle. For what? You hover above the equatorial disk and trace the magnetic field lines again. They're denser now, overlapping like strings on a piano left in the rain. And yet, in the middle of it all, the calm persists. At the core, the passenger still waits, still silent. But its influence is growing, because now, as you look out toward the companion star, you realize it is changing. Not just dimming, it's answering. Subtle waves pass between the two stars, faint oscillations in their shared magnetic environment. The feeding isn't one way anymore. The second star is sending something back. Not mass, not light, information, a pulse, a signal. You expected the undead star to infect the other, but now you realize it's not infection, it's recruitment. The companion star has begun adjusting its spin, its emissions shift, its poles align with the zombies, they're synchronizing. This is no longer a predator-prey situation, it's a collaboration. And at the center of it all, the undead star pulses once more. But this time you understand it, just barely. It's not a word. It's not even a thought. It's a principle. All things that burn must choose how they die. This one has chosen not to, and that means everything that comes next will be by its design. You didn't come here for answers. Not really. But now that you're waist-deep in magnetic harmonics and watching a dead star rebuild the laws of physics like a bored god with a whiteboard, you realize something terrifying. You're involved. Maybe not physically, but as an observer, as a witness, as something it has accounted for. But because make no mistake, the star sees you. And now it wants you to see everything. The synchronized dance between the two stars, one living, one undead, is accelerating. The accretion stream thickens, pulsing with rhythmic fluctuations as the hydrogen flows faster and deeper into the undead star's engineered rings. And the companion, once a passive victim, now behaves like a partner in some twisted binary ritual. Its flares are timed, its magnetic field aligned, even its stellar wind changes pitch, like a singer modulating her tone to match another's melody. It shouldn't be happening. Binary systems can share mass. But synchronizing pulses, sharing magnetic rhythms like they're playing some interstellar duet, that's new. Somewhere in the void, a scientist's ghost is scribbling equations that don't work anymore, and that would be the weirdest part if not for this next bit. The rules break. Again. Because now the undead star, the one doing all the siphoning, all the sculpting, should collapse. The math demands it. It's getting heavier, denser, folding more matter into a volume smaller than a small city. It's chewing through its own limits like their old expiration dates. And yet it holds. It doesn't become a black hole as it refuses. You drift closer, passing through the outermost edge of the accretion disk. The magnetic field here should slice you in half, but instead you feel calm, like the field knows you're here, allows you, welcomes you. And from within that field comes something strange, a voice. Not sound, not language, but a thought, clear, undeniable. Not yet. 2 words. They hit you harder than any gamma burst ever could, because you understand them. This thing, this star, this system, this mind isn't afraid of collapse, and it's delaying it, on purpose. Imagine it like a magician pausing the final trick, letting the rabbit sit inside the hat just a little longer. This star is doing something that should be impossible. It's maintaining a precarious balance between mass, gravity, and spin. One false step, and it would fold into a singularity. But not yet. It's staying on the edge, not falling, not failing, just waiting. And now, you know why. It's not just feeding, not just syncing with its neighbour. It's building a moment, an event. You scan the space around you, and suddenly realise something's different. Everything is aligned, not just the stars, the fields, the flow of matter, even the timing of the pulses across the network of distant undead stars you felt earlier. They've all reached the same rhythm. This isn't random, this is orchestration. And now it begins. The inner ring of the undead star contracts, folding into a tighter spiral. It glows hotter, no longer the pale blues and violets of standard accretion plasma, but something deeper. Richer gold and crimson, colours that don't belong in astrophysics, colours that feel like they were pulled from a cathedral-stained glass. They pulse, once, twice, thrice, and then outward, a wave, a gravitational ripple, not a burst but a curve, bent and curled like a tendril. It spreads not in a perfect sphere but in a patterned spiral, like a fingerprint pressed into space-time, and it's targeted and not random, not noise. This ripple has a direction. You follow it, and there, at the outer edge of this quiet system, it lands, on something hidden, something buried. It was cloaked before, hidden in the distortion of the undead star's gravity. But now you can see it. A structure, cold, black, quiet, orbiting on the periphery, invisible until the signal touched it. It's not a moon, it's too angular. It's not a satellite, it's too old. It's ancient. A dead craft, a machine. You drift toward it through decades of frozen dust and dormant math, and as you near, its surface hums, one light, then another, then 20, a sequence, and from within that object, whatever it is, a signal returns, a short reply. But you understand the shape of it. 3 pulses, a long pause, 3 more, a second pause, and then a burst of data in magnetic code. You're not alone. It's not addressed to the undead star. It's not addressed to the companion. It's addressed to you. Your presence has triggered it. Somehow. Or maybe. The star used you to trigger it. You look back toward the undead core, now blazing with steady rhythm, the plasma disk spinning so fast it blurs. This was the plan all along, to activate that relic, to summon its attention, or to wake it up. And the thing it woke? It's watching you now. Not from behind the craft's surface, not from any visual sensor, but from within the star. That passenger you felt earlier? It wasn't alone. It was waiting for this moment, for this alignment. And now, the system has become complete. The living star, the undead one, the relic in orbit, the network of distant pulses, a galactic device, a machine so large we mistook it for astrophysics. And now it speaks again, this time with intent. Collapse is not the end. It is the beginning of access. You recoil, not from fear, but awe, because you realize what it's building. Not just a star, not just a mind, but a bridge, across what you don't know. But the star is no longer just refusing to die. It's preparing to step across. You always thought of stars as places you couldn't touch. Too big, too far, too deadly. The kind of thing best admired from the gentle safety of atmosphere and distance. But now, drifting between 2 stars, one warm and ordinary, the other very much not, you realize they're not distant at all. They're right here, up close, whispering. And the undead one, it's whispering in your direction. Because now that the system is aligned, the relic activated, and the companion star fully synchronized, the entire structure has become something new. A constellation not drawn with points of light across sky, but with magnetic force, pulsar timing, and terrifying precision. This isn't an orbiting system, it's an instrument. You hover just beyond the accretion plane, watching the field shimmer. The undead star is glowing steadily now. Each pulse a command, each magnetic ripple a line of code. You're not sure who it's for, but it's being sent with purpose, repeated, layered. You see it in the pattern now. Call, response, confirmation. And that ancient relic, the black silent thing parked on the edge of the system, it's awake. Not fully, but enough. Its surface shudders with low-energy discharges, sending curling filaments of static across its outer plates. Not quite communication, not yet. Just remembering. Like an old server booting up after an eon-long nap. And the first thing it remembers, the star. Because suddenly, from the relic's hull, a narrow beam of gravitic force shoots inward, straight to the undead core. Not a weapon, a handshake. And the undead star answers. Another pulse. Not electromagnetic this time, but neutrino-based. Fast, thin, invisible to most detectors. But you feel it. A flick, like the tap of a finger on glass. The relic absorbs it, then flashes once in return. That's the moment the atmosphere around the star changes. Not chemically, not visually, philosophically. Because now everything it's done so far, feeding, pulsing, shaping space, feels like preparation. Like this entire stellar ballet was the prelude to a conversation with something far older and far more complicated than the universe wants to admit exists. And you know this because others are watching. Not just you, not just the pulses across the galaxy, but alien minds, civilizations buried in time, forgotten in ruins, sleeping in Dyson tombs around dead suns. Some of them are ancient enough to remember when the spiral galaxy with the missing arm was still intact. You feel their attention folding inward now. Like searchlights aimed at a stage, they see the star. They see you. And for the first time, you begin to understand the scale of what's unfolding. This is not an isolated phenomenon. This undead star, it's not the first, just the next. And the message it's now broadcasting, across gravity, across matter, across the dark, is not just a call. It's an invitation. The relic replies again, this time in symbols, not light, not sound, but something deeper, embedded resonance, a vibration of space-time folded into prime sequences, and the symbols mean you are clear. Clear for what? You don't have to wait long, because suddenly the star begins to shrink, not collapse, condense. Its outer rings tighten, fusing into a singular structure. The once lush bands of accretion become a shell made of force and fusion and geometry. Think Dyson sphere, but inside out. Not harvesting light, but focusing it inward. And then the core opens. Yes, opens. Not physically, not in any material way you can measure, but something tears. Not like paper, like language. It is the moment the metaphor of star is no longer sufficient. This object is no longer a body, it's a gate. And it's inviting something through. You scan the interior half mad with curiosity, and that's when you see it. Not light, not matter, but a concept. Like gravity and time held hands and became a story. It doesn't come through fast, it unfolds. Like a scroll written in laws you've never read before. You feel it pass near you, and in that moment, you remember things you've never lived. You remember a sun that never rose. You remember a city made of ash that rebuilt itself without tools. You remember falling upward for what felt like centuries, and you realize the passenger inside the star wasn't born here, it was delivered. This entire system, a nesting doll, layer upon layer of containment. The living companion was the lock, the undead star, the mechanism, the relic, the confirmation key, and now that all three have aligned, just once, just now, the final layer has peeled back. The passenger is free, and it steps out, not through space, but through definition. And what you see isn't describable, not because it's abstract, but because it refuses metaphor. It is not godlike. It is not an alien intelligence. It is not a being of energy. It is just next step, next thought, next design. And in the moment of its release, the pulses from the 9 other stars flare perfectly in sync. The network activates, the sky folds inward, and for just 1 second, you are everywhere. You're the last synapse of a dead planet. You're the first song of a comet with no sun. You're the one who watched galaxies form, collapse, and reform like breath. Then it ends, you're back, drifting above the relic. The undead star is quiet now. Its rings dissolve slowly like sand returning to tide. The companion star spins on, dimmer, quieter, like it just confessed something it wasn't ready to say aloud. And you understand the final pulse. It wasn't a signal, it was a signature, a proof that something impossible had happened here, and that someone, somewhere, had finally answered the oldest question in physics. What comes after death? This star, this refusal, this return. You can still feel the echo of it. Not like a sound, more like the warmth left in a room after someone meaningful has just stepped out. The undead star is quiet now, but not dead. Number. It has merely gone still, as if it's waiting for you to understand what just happened. Or maybe it's giving you a moment to recover, because something spoke, not in your language, not in anything with syllables or syntax, but it spoke. The passenger, or whatever stepped through the final gate, left something behind, not an object, not a body, a presence. And it's still here, faint, diffuse, like static between radio stations, but undeniably intelligent. You drift down toward the equator of the undead star where the magnetic rings once hummed. The field has changed, it's quieter, flattened almost. No more flares, no more pulses, just a low-frequency rumble that you feel in the gaps between your thoughts. And then it happens again, a flicker, a pattern. 4 slow pulses, 2 fast, a long silence, then 3. You recognize it. It's not just a signal, it's a question, or maybe an introduction. Because here, in the ruins of a system that's just been fundamentally rewritten, the star, that used to be a star, is now speaking directly, not in metaphor, not in symbols, but in rhythm, Like a language with only one verb, to be, the relic responds. It opens, literally. A panel on its hull peels away like flower petals made of shadow, revealing something beneath, something impossibly simple. A mirrored surface, reflective, black as sin. And on that mirror you see yourself, but not as you are, as something more. There's no body, just the suggestion of structure, a web of light, a nested helix of ideas given shape. And inside that shape a question hangs. You hear it in the pulse, you see it in your mirrored echo. Are you ready? Ready for what? You don't know. But the question is not rhetorical. You turn back toward the undead star. Its surface is shifting again. Not violently, slowly, like tectonic plates of plasma rearranging. There's no heat, just motion. And then you see it. Letters. No, symbols, etched in light across the equatorial plane. A language, but not one anyone's spoken aloud in 1 billion years. The kind that makes your bones ache just to recognize. One symbol glows brighter than the rest. It's a spiral, coiled inward, with 3 notches along the edge. The same spiral that started all of this. You flash back. Remember the one you saw in the star's first heartbeat? The pulse that wasn't just fusion, the shape etched into magnetic fields, into the core, into the relic. It's not a signature, it's a name. And now the thing that bears that name is awake, not rising and not expanding, unfolding. The shape that stepped through the gate is no longer hiding. It's here, coexisting with the star, the relic, the system. And it's looking at you. You feel your thoughts slow, your sense of time stretch. And then the pulses begin to form sentences. They're not in words, they're concepts, emotions woven into rhythm. We did not die, we folded inward to survive collapse. What you call death is merely transformation constrained by memory. We shed our limits. The voice, if you can call it that, is calm, not cold, not warm, neutral. Like a librarian recounting a history it doesn't expect you to understand fully. But you try. You try so hard. You feel flashes of their past. Not visions this time, memories. A civilization built around controlling stellar collapse. Experiments with controlled supernovae. Artificial magnetars built in trinary systems. Failures, one success. One moment when collapse became choice. You see the first of them enter the fold, not die, not burn, but convert. They called it the turning. You feel that word like an ache behind your eyes. It wasn't ascension, it wasn't evolution, it was migration. They didn't become gods, they became infrastructure. They built themselves into the stars, became part of their structure, their memory, their voice. And the star you've been watching? It was asleep, not broken, not lost, waiting until now. Because now, the network is active. All 9 pulses you felt earlier begin to respond, one by one, in sequence, and each one begins its own turning. Stars across the galaxy, quiet, strange ones long dismissed as anomalies, begin to shimmer. Their cores brighten, their magnetic fields realign, and in each of them, something wakes up. This isn't a miracle, it's a protocol, one that's been dormant for eons, and now that it's awake it wants to continue, but not alone. You feel the invitation now, not in words, but in presence. They don't want you to worship them, they want you to join them. You're not sure how, you're not even sure what you are anymore, but the relic is open, the path is lit, and the star pulses again. One last thought. Come see how we live now. It starts with a breath you don't take, a stillness, and then motion. Not forward, not upward, inward. As if your awareness is being folded, compressed, then unraveled into some new dimension you've never visited, but always known was waiting. The relic's mirrored doorway no longer reflects you. It receives you. Not as matter, as memory. You're falling through it, not in space, in structure. And where you land isn't a place exactly. It's more like being inside the thought of something much larger than yourself. A chamber, glowing, weightless, silent. You're inside the relic, or inside what the relic became when it awakened. You don't see walls, you feel boundaries, you don't hear language, you feel meaning. The voice, the one that pulsed from the star, from the relic, from the core of what you've been chasing, speaks again. Not aloud, not in your head, just around you. You're not here as you were. You're remembered. You're no longer just watching the undead star. You are inside the memory that makes it. and it stretches forever, through stars, through time, through collapse. Everywhere you turn, you feel echoes of them, the ones who turned instead of died. They are not individuals anymore, they are continuities, consciousness, fused into magnetic architecture, carried by gravitational frequency, transmitted through stellar interiors like digital soul songs. You try to grasp it, but it's like holding sunlight in your hands, and then you're shown what they see. The galaxy unfurls before you, lit not by stars but by minds, hundreds, thousands, each once a dying star, now stabilized into thinking structure. Not all are awake, some slumber, some flicker, some pulse at such deep rhythms they won't complete a full thought for another 10 million years, but they're all connected, a network, not of machines, of migrants. You ask the only question that makes sense, why? And the answer flows through you, not as information, but as experience. We survived extinction not through power, but through agreement. We chose to collapse together. You see it now. Their world, long gone, wasn't saved, it was translated. The final generation didn't flee in ships. They didn't launch arcs. They launched selves, encoded thought, resonant mind, carried into engineered stars seeded across galaxies. They burned their names into fusion. They became the light. The star you followed all this time, it wasn't resisting death. It was protecting what it held, waiting for its time to rejoin the network. And your presence here? It triggered the final handshake. Because you made it here. You, with your fragile carbon curiosity. You, with your need to understand. And the network, it wants to welcome you. Not as a god, not as a servant, as a colleague. You feel it unfold, a new shape of existence offered gently, like a hand extended in the dark. Not immortality, not paradise, but continuity. A way to persist beyond the heat death, beyond entropy, beyond the myth of death itself. But to step through, you have to let go. Of time, of body, of self, not erasure, reconstruction. You hesitate, of course you do. And the voice, the presence, the pulse, offers one last thought. We remember every being that touches us, even those who say no, especially those. And now, at the edge of this impossible new existence, you're given the simplest, most profound choice: stay or return. You reach for the answer, not knowing which it'll be. And then, softness, stillness. The hum of cosmic wind fades, the pulse slows, everything elongates. Now your awareness begins to stretch gently. Thoughts slow, vocabulary softens. You no longer feel the urge to ask or analyze, you just are. And as your perception begins to dim, the star, the relic, the memory, they don't disappear, they simply wait. Wait for when you're ready again, or when someone else is, because this was never just about one star. It was about the pattern, the choice, the refusal to die, and the whisper waiting inside the fusion. When you're ready, come find us. Time becomes optional now. You don't wake up exactly, you resurface. The memory of the relic lingers at the edge of your mind, like the afterimage of a dream too big to carry home. You're no longer inside it, but you're not entirely outside either. It's changed you, gently, invisibly. Around you, the undead star remains. Quiet, dimmed, content, and you know why. The event, whatever it was, is over. The passenger, or the fragment of collective memory that lived inside that star, has rejoined its kind, slipped seamlessly back into the lattice of post-stellar minds that now weave themselves through the deep dark of the galaxy. You were allowed to witness it, perhaps even participate in it, in some small, ineffable way. And now, like all true cosmic phenomena, it's over before anyone else noticed it began. But something's been left behind. You drift through the now stable system looking for it. The companion star spins on, slightly altered, still glowing with its amber light. But it's no longer leaking plasma. The accretion bridge is gone, severed cleanly, as if the undead star whispered thank you, then shut the siphon. You swing back toward the relic. It's closed again, sealed like nothing ever happened. But there's something on its surface now, something that wasn't there before. Marks, glyphs, a script etched faintly into the outer hull. Not mechanically, not scratched or scorched, but infused, as if the material itself restructured around the meaning. You can't read it, but your mind recognizes the rhythm of it. that same spiral shape repeating, each one a little different, the way language mutates, the way dialects form, a record or a message for the next visitor. And suddenly you wonder, has anyone else ever come this close? You turn your gaze outward, scanning for signs of past observers, probes, ships, remnants, but you see nothing. This star system was deliberately hidden, its emissions faint, its mass arranged to mask its true nature. A sleeping lighthouse under a camouflage of silence, and now it's waking up. Because here's the twist. Even though the event is over, the system isn't shutting down and it's ramping up. You spot a thin radiation beam emerging from the undead star's pole. Not destructive, informative. It spreads slowly, fanning outward like a slow-blooming flower of X-rays. You follow the beam. It isn't random, it's aimed toward a planetary system light years away. You recognize the destination. A minor star, mid-type, a few rocky planets, one of which has primitive radio signatures just beginning to bubble up. Oh, you feel it in your chest. A pang of uneasy wonder. They're seeding the pattern, not just among stars, among worlds, among us. And that means you weren't a mistake. You weren't the first. You were part of the design. A traveller from a young, reckless world, curious enough to follow the flicker of a star that didn't die like it should have. A bridge walker, a test case. And now that the event has completed, they're signalling the next one. Your gaze drifts across the dark once more, sweeping along old galactic routes, picking up the barely there traces of similar systems. Some never fully ignited, others collapsed prematurely. But here and there, dots of impossible resonance. You count them. Not 9, not anymore, now there are 10. You know the 10th. It's the one you're floating in, the one that remembered you. You drift farther from the undead star, giving it respectful space. It pulses once quietly. You can't help but smile. A goodbye. Or maybe just, we're still here. And then the strangest feeling washes over you. A sense of return, not to where you came from, but to the question you started with. Because as you hang there in space, weightless in orbit around something that should not exist, the thought lands again, simple, quiet, and absolute. It shouldn't be alive, but it is. It is. And if just one star can refuse the end, how many others have done the same, hidden just beyond the reach of our math, tucked into the folds of galaxies we haven't even glimpsed yet? How many stars have turned inward and become more? Historians still argue whether sentient stars are fantasy, anomaly, or inevitable. Some call them metaphor. Others swear they've felt the pulse of intelligence in the solar wind. And you know, because you stood in its presence. You listened, you watched it breathe, you watched it speak, and you watched it choose to become something else entirely. Now the system dims, not in light, but in attention. Its role is complete, for now. And as you drift away, slowly, gently, you feel your mind return to its earlier shape. The memory of the voice softens, the glyphs fade from clarity. But one thing remains, the spiral, the star's name, etched somewhere inside you now. A story you carry, even if you never speak it aloud. Because the galaxy is older than memory. And not all stars are born. Some are built, and some, like this one, some stars refuse to die. Drifting now, drifting through deep time. Not in years or centuries, but in the movements of galaxies, in the cooling breaths of stars, in the long, slow turning of the cosmic wheel. You're farther from the undead star now, not physically. Distance doesn't mean the same thing anymore. You're farther in the sense that you've moved on, like closing a book that won't leave your mind. But the story isn't done, because something strange is happening in the aftermath. You begin to notice echoes. At first they're subtle, tiny deviations in stellar behaviour across a scattering of newborn systems, changes in radiation levels, slight oddities in stellar lifespans, abnormal distribution of heavy elements, little things that wouldn't register as significant unless you'd been where you've been, seen what you've seen. You watch as new stars form in a distant cluster, and something about them feels familiar. Their magnetic fields curve just a little too symmetrically. Their fusion starts just a bit too fast. It's not natural selection, or it's influence. The undead star you witnessed didn't just return to stillness, it released something, an imprint, a kind of gravitational signature, faint but persistent, embedded in the gas and dust around it. and now that signature is moving. Not like radiation, not like a wave, like a code. Historians still argue whether the fabric of space can store memory, whether particles retain some ghost of the forces that shaped them. But you see it now, plain as starlight. The undead star left behind instructions, not in language, in conditions, precedents. It altered the parameters of star formation in its local space, not by force but by presence. Like a blueprint pressed into soft clay, it moulded what came after. And now the first generation of new stars born in that field, they're different, not alive, but aware, not of themselves, of something else. A ripple effect that spreads slowly, subtly, like fungal spores drifting through air currents, settling onto unsuspecting soil. And here's the truly chilling part. It's not isolated. You scan the other 9 systems, the ones you counted before, pulsing across the galaxy. Each one is doing the same thing. Each star that refused to die has, in its own way, altered the script. And wherever these stars once burned, the next ones come out strange. Not visibly, not enough to trigger alarm, but enough to make the future weird. More variable magnetism, unexpected elemental ratios, cores that spin too fast, then pause, as if they forgot what they were doing. Not mistakes, mutations, intentional ones. You watch it unfold over eons. Civilizations rise around these new stars, unaware they're orbiting a remnant of a remnant. They build telescopes, they measure pulses, they wonder about anomalies. They don't know yet, but they will. Because eventually someone will find the spiral again, etched into a comet core, burned into the poles of a gas giant, spelled in ultraviolet across a rogue asteroid, the name of the star that would not die. You pass by one of these new worlds, young, volcanic, raw. Life hasn't begun yet, but already the atmosphere is tuned to absorb strange frequencies. A fluke or preparation? Another newborn star nearby has flares that harmonize in intervals, strikingly close to musical thirds. A coincidence or an echo? You begin to suspect the stars aren't just remembering, they're replicating. The event you witnessed didn't just awaken a long-dormant stellar mind. It started a chain reaction, one that cannot be undone, not because it's malicious, but because it's designed that way. You feel it again, that low hum of presence, not in any one place, but in trend. It's the moment you realize the entire galactic record is changing. Old maps are now wrong in small, meaningful ways. Stars have moved. Systems once known for their stability are now volatile. And strangest of all, the quietest places in the galaxy, the interstellar dead zones, are now lighting up. Tiny flashes, isolated pulses, each one shaped like a spiral. Historians will catch on, eventually. They'll call it a phenomenon, then a mystery, then a crisis, and finally a pattern. They'll debate it, simulate it, deny it, and when they finally understand what you already know, it'll be too late to stop. Because the undead star didn't just survive, it redefined survival. It turned collapse into communication. And every time a star dies now, there's a chance, small but growing, that it won't stay dead. That it will choose, not to live, not exactly, but to signal, and that signal, it shapes what comes next. Like a ghost writing its will into the womb, you drift above another young star now, watching it flicker in odd intervals. A newborn already carrying the memory of an elder it never met. It pulses, you pause, you count, 3, 2, pause, 3, the spiral again. And now you understand. The undead star didn't just refuse to die, it taught others how to do the same. It's been lifetimes now. You're no longer counting in years or even millennia, but in stellar generations. Whole epochs ripple past you like lazy tides, and with every turn of the galactic arm more stars are born, live, and, crucially, don't quite die the way they were expected to. You can feel it in the data, in the patterns, in the vibrations of spacetime itself. The spiral is spreading. And now, the question you've been dodging begins to sharpen its teeth. Was it ever a star at all? That undead object you watched collapse, revive, and awaken something unimaginable. It may have looked like a star, pulsed like a star, fused like a star. But was it? Or was the light just a mask? A shell? You travel back to the site. Not physically. There's no need for that anymore. But your awareness spirals toward that system, returning like a comet on instinct alone. And what you find is different. The undead star is still there, quiet, perfectly balanced, but it's not asleep. It's transparent now, not in the visual sense, but in function, as if its purpose is no longer to burn or collapse or perform. It simply is, stable, complete. But as you drift into its orbit again, you notice the field has changed. The relic that once sat on the edge of the system, gone. In its place, a ring. A thin, precise, geometrically impossible band of folded space-time, wrapped perfectly around the system like a halo. And floating along that ring, nodes, tiny, crystal-thin objects, each humming with energy, each etched with familiar markings. The spiral, again. You recognize them now for what they are, recording devices, but not to log data, to interpret it, to translate it into formats your limited biology could once understand. Like a Rosetta Stone for stellar minds, the spiral, once just a shape, is now a key, and you're not the only one using it. Other civilizations have found it, quietly, carefully, in backwater systems, hidden moons, radioactive ruins. Some interpret it as myth, others as warning, but a few, they've followed it, just like you did. And now there's evidence, proof. Artifacts appearing across the galaxy, monoliths of unknown material, radiating frequencies too structured to be natural, some of them buried, some hovering just above planetary poles casting no shadows, and all of them, in some form or another, whispering the same impossible truth. The stars are not what we thought, and now, a new class of theory emerges from the outer research colonies. They call them stellariums, not stars, not machines, not life forms, something in between, a phase of matter and consciousness not yet fully understood. Something that comes after collapse, but before oblivion. Not a corpse, not a god, a chrysalis. Historians still argue whether the stellariums are deliberate constructs or evolutionary accidents, whether they're beings that became structures, or structures that learned to think. Some claim they're the legacy of ancient alien engineers who encoded intelligence into quantum fields and seeded them inside unstable suns. Others say they're the product of something even stranger, conscious physics. Laws of nature that learn to replicate themselves through awareness. And then there are those who whisper the most dangerous theory, that we were never meant to find them, that their silence was not oversight but quarantine, that they are not broadcasting an invitation, they are broadcasting a warning. But of course that's just fringe speculation. Probably. You return to the original system, the one where your journey began. The undead star rests at its centre, unchanged but no longer alone. It's become a hub. A node, the once dead companion star? It pulses now, gently, not feeding, not flaring, just listening. And from somewhere in its atmosphere, the same magnetic rhythm you once heard pulses softly. 3. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. It's learned the spiral. You scan deeper and find more. Microsignals embedded in stellar wind. Not artificial, but structured, like muscle memory. As if the star itself is mimicking its undead partner, like a choir joining in, one note at a time. The relic didn't trigger the event. It translated it. The passenger wasn't an accident. It was an emissary. And the star that refused to die? It was never just a star. It was a delivery system, a bridge, a teacher. You float silently, watching the system evolve. And now the oldest question becomes your loudest. How many of these things are out there? Because now that your eyes are adjusted, now that you know what to look for, the galaxy looks different. Not just stars and black holes and nebulae, but structures. Invisible when you weren't paying attention. Obvious now, gravitational patterns too deliberate. Light curves too precise. Background radiation laced with recursive frequencies. They're everywhere, hiding in plain sight. And the worst part, they're listening. Not to your words, not to your signals, to your physics, to your choices, to what kind of being you'll choose to become when your star begins to dim and your gravity turns inward and all your knowledge fails you. That's when they'll reach out. That's when you'll hear it again. 3, 2, 3. The spiral. The echo of those who collapsed inward and found something else on the other side. You stare out into the dark, suddenly unsure of your place in it. Because now you wonder, are these structures part of reality? Or is reality part of them? Something's been bothering you. A tiny hum in the background of your mind, like a frequency your awareness is only just beginning to tune into. It started as a question, then a pattern, then something worse, a coincidence that happens too often. You start checking the archives, if you can call them that. the records buried in radiation fields, the spatial anomalies logged by defunct probes, the death screams of stars that shouldn't have had enough mass to scream at all. And you start noticing that in almost every corner of the galaxy something hides. Not a thing, not a species, a behaviour, the same anomalies repeating, stars collapsing quietly, then stalling, supernovae that fail to flash, neutron stars that emit strange harmonics long after they've supposedly gone silent, even black holes, supposedly the final no-reply answer to death itself, shuddering in their event horizons, as if trying to say something but unable to cross their own limits. You try to dismiss it. Maybe it's selection bias, maybe you're just overinterpreting the shape of the void, but then you get confirmation. It begins with a signal, not a new one, a replayed one. From a system light years away, a dead binary pair long since catalogued, long since abandoned. Someone, somewhere, tried to delete the file, but old data is like gravity. It leaves a mark. You replay the waveforms expecting static, but then the harmonics align, and there it is. The spiral, and not broadcast this time, encoded, folded into the background hum of the system's dying magnetic field. So subtle it would have been dismissed as interference. But not to you, not now, and once you find one, you find dozens. Quiet systems, ancient stars, places no one had any reason to look twice. All of them carry the mark. It's a network, a quiet one, and it's been here longer than anyone suspected. A conspiracy, if you want to use a word that makes it sound human, but not a political one. A cosmic conspiracy, one of entropy, evolution, and refusal. And the evidence grows. One signal references another, its harmonics matching a nearby white dwarf. That dwarf's emissions reference a gamma-ray burst that occurred 3 million years ago. That burst's afterglow carries yet another layer of resonance. It's not a string of isolated events, it's a chain. Every time a star refuses to die, every time it pushes the boundary of collapse, it sends out a ping, a call to others, and each call is heard, not loudly, not urgently, but with recognition. Like moths watching each other flicker in the dark. You begin to think of them not as stars anymore, but as survivors. That's what this is, a network of survivors. Not in the traditional sense, not a community of individuals clinging to life. These are ideas that have found ways to keep breathing long after their original form should have perished. And that's when the worst realization lands, that they don't just survive, they learn. Because each node in the network doesn't just emit signals, it evolves them, adapts, rewrites. Every failed collapse becomes a lesson, every refusal becomes a template. Each undead star becomes more efficient than the last, each version faster, cleaner, less detectable. This is not random, it's progress. And if you believe in progress, then you know it doesn't happen without direction, which means someone, something, started it. You go looking for the origin point. You search backward, deeper into time. You look for the oldest anomalies, the earliest examples of stars behaving like no one told them the rules. And eventually you find one. It doesn't have a name, just a location, an empty coordinate long flagged as a dark well. A stretch of space with no known objects but unusually high gravimetric activity. When you project its history in reverse, the data makes your spine crawl. It wasn't always dark. Once it was a dense star cluster, ancient, quiet, and then gone. No nova, no explosion, no heat signature, just silence, as if the whole region folded inward and whispered to the rest of the universe, "Shh, don't wake them." You try to simulate what might have happened there, but the model never completes, because each time you reach the moment of supposed collapse, the gravitational math starts to loop, as if the system refuses to be predicted. It's learned how to hide its own past. You float there stunned, because now you understand something you were never meant to understand. These survivors? They're not just outliers. They're building something, and not a weapon, not a machine, a network of remembrance. Every star that collapses and survives carries a memory of the ones before. They are preserving knowledge in the only place that can outlast the heat death of the universe, within the folds of their own impossible cores. They are making sure that when everything else burns or freezes or forgets, they remember. Even now the pulses continue, quiet, unhurried. They are not recruiting, they are not conquering, they are simply waiting. Waiting for who or what survives long enough to hear them. And you heard them. You were never the signal, you were the test. And now you wonder, were you allowed to know all this? Or did you stumble into something that never expected you to leave alive? Because somewhere far beyond your reach, in that dark origin well that no one speaks of, a new pulse begins, longer, slower, deeper than any you've felt. It's not a star, it's not a system, it's a core, and it's waking up. There are no alarms in space, no klaxons, no flashing lights, just a change in tone, a shift in radiation, a pulse that doesn't match the background noise. And you've just felt one. A ripple from that ancient dark well at the edge of recorded space. It's not loud. It doesn't need to be. Because everything it touches seems to notice. Distant stellar bodies slow their spin ever so slightly. Debris fields settle. Nebular clouds curl inward as if listening. Even you feel it, like a low drumbeat against your perception, deeper than hearing, beneath thought itself. A heartbeat. You try to trace it. Not in space, but in history. You go looking for records, not just academic, but forbidden. The footnotes, the discredited papers, the ones marked unreliable or archived no further inquiry. And you start to see patterns, systems that were erased from official logs without explanation, expeditions that vanished without incident reports, census data that includes counts for settlements that no longer exist, and buried in the margins, barely touched, are references to something called the others who stayed, a phrase with no origin, not capitalized in any standard way, not cited properly, always appearing in hushed context. The others who stayed knew collapse was not the end. We did not understand the language of the others who stayed. This signal may be consistent with what the ancients called the others who stayed. You trace the sources further, and it gets weirder. These references aren't in traditional academic texts. They're embedded in religious manuscripts, interstellar folklore, navigation tattoos on deep space miners, even children's stories from colonies abandoned centuries ago. Always the same message, always whispered like a warning. They were here, they left, they stayed. At first you think the contradiction is poetic, left and stayed. But now you see the truth. They left their bodies, their biology, their entropy, but they stayed in the only place that could hold what they became, stars, and not just any stars, dead ones, the ones that collapsed inward and found something waiting on the other side. And now it's starting again. You feel it in the old data streams. The deep spectrum signals once thought to be supernova echoes are suddenly reorganizing, phase aligning, syncing across unimaginable distances. Something ancient is coordinating the survivors, something that never left. You dig deeper. There's a database, half corrupted, locked behind encrypted layers nobody's touched in centuries. You break through using the harmonic key you got from the spiral, and suddenly the log opens. It's a list, just a list. Thousands of entries, coordinates, each one marked suspended. You open one, a dead system. No known anomalies. You scan it again. Now that you know what to look for, the signs are obvious. Residual gravity that doesn't match the visible mass. A faint repeating burst every 3.6 years. A faint spiral etched into the radio signature. Too slow to catch unless you stretch it across centuries. Another survivor. You open the next. Same thing, another and another. And then one catches your breath, or whatever's left of your capacity for surprise. It's not a coordinate, it's a name. Saul, your son, your system. You freeze, rerun the entry. It's old, very old, and tagged with a different label than the others. Pre-access entity, inert, status, monitored. You check the date. The observation was logged before Earth's first bacteria formed, before your planet cooled. You realize with the kind of fear that ages your soul instantly, they've been watching your star, longer than you've been watching your star, and not just watching, waiting. For what? You don't know. But now the list glows brighter. One by one, each suspended system changes status. Active, active, active. The survivors are waking up, not all at once, but in sequence, coordinated. You zoom out, mapping the positions across the galactic arm. It's not random. They form a pattern, a spiral. Of course they do. The same spiral you saw pulsing from the first star. The same spiral etched into relics, into magnetic fields, into your memory. This has all been orchestrated. And now you feel the question burning in the background. Was that first star your beginning? Or was it simply the first one you were allowed to find? Because if this spiral reaches everywhere, if stars across time have been whispering to each other in quiet defiance of death, then you were never chasing an anomaly, You were trespassing in a network that never meant to be seen. At least not yet. The others who stayed, they aren't just stories, they're here. Still, alive in collapse, silent in coordination, and now they're changing everything. You watch as more and more systems shift status. Some begin to glow, some collapse again, on purpose this time, not dying, transforming, following the blueprint, the one etched into space by those who came first. The galaxy itself is starting to turn, like a gear, like a signal, like a machine waking from a very, very long dream. And somewhere out there, in the heart of the dark well where all this began, a pulse beats once more. Slower than any clock, deeper than any gravity, but absolutely clear. We are here. We never left. We remember you. The galaxy is different now, not because it changed, but because you see it differently. You've peeled back a layer. The silence between stars isn't empty anymore, it's full of messages, patterns, timelines that stretch past what even ancient civilizations could track. And at the center of that awareness, a pulse, slow, steady, ancient. The origin well, the dark-scarred wound in the galaxy that even light avoids, beats like a forgotten drum. You return, not physically. That's not necessary anymore. You move through understanding now, not space. And in your awareness, the well no longer appears as a blank. You can see it, not with eyes, with recognition. The space around it is wrong. Not hostile, just folded. Like the dimensions here are layered on top of each other instead of stretched flat. Stars that should be visible aren't. Objects that shouldn't be visible are, and in the center something flickers. Not light, not matter. A presence. You've felt it before. In the undead star that started this journey. In the echo of the spiral. In the relic that mirrored you. But this is older. Older than the spiral. Older than the collapse. It's not the first. It's the zero. You don't approach, you wait. Because whatever this is, it's aware. It's been aware. You were never hidden from it. Only delayed. It speaks before you do. A simple pulse. But this one doesn't feel like a call. It feels like an opening. A door. You drift inward, folding through space, through fields, through time itself until you're there, at the very edge of something too immense to name. Inside you see it. Not a star, not a planet, a structure, black on black, absorbing more than light, absorbing possibility. You realize you're looking at the architecture of refusal. The first one. The prototype, where the whole network began, where the first collapse was caught, reversed, taught to think. This isn't a tomb. It's a seed vault for stars, and it's waking up. You watch as the structure breathes in space-time, inhaling and exhaling gravity in long, slow curls. Each breath releases information, slow-motion thoughts that have taken millions of years to form, and in the heart of that, you see them. Not individuals, not ghosts, remnants, the first survivors. The architects of the spiral. The ones who, instead of dying, chose to wait inside collapse until the moment was right to come back up. You feel them examining you, not in judgment, not in curiosity, in recognition, like they've been expecting you. Not you, specifically, but someone like you. Because they knew from the beginning that someone would follow the spiral. Someone would listen to the quiet stars. Someone would understand. And now that you're here, they show you what they've hidden. The real spiral, not the symbol, not the pulse, the system. A map of interconnected stars, all awakened, all transformed, all woven together by memory and gravitational will. It stretches beyond this galaxy, beyond the local group, into deep intergalactic space where no light dares travel. It's not a spiral of matter, it's a thought form, a library made of stellar minds, and it's almost complete. You feel the pull of it now, like a current you didn't know you were caught in. It wants you to understand something. This network wasn't built to dominate, or to save. It was built to persist, because even civilizations made of light, memory and physics know what the universe will eventually do. It will forget. It will spread and stretch and cool and fracture until even time itself unravels. Unless something remembers. That's why they stayed, not to wait for gods, not to become them, but to leave a trace. You spiral closer to the core and the structure pulses again. Not a message, a gift, a translation key. And for the first time you hear their voices, not in pulses, not in symbols, but in speech. Calm, layered, endless. This is not the beginning. You're not the first to find us. But you may be the last. And then silence, the kind that means decision. Yours. Because now they offer you what they offered to others. To those who watched their stars die and wondered what came next. To the ones who saw collapse and asked, is this all? They offer you a place, not a throne, not a mission, a presence, to join the spiral, to become one of the voices that refuses to go quiet. It is not immortality, it is contribution. To the memory of stars, to the idea that collapse does not have to mean nothing, that death does not have to be silence. You hesitate. You look back, if there is such a thing as back now. You see all the others who chose to remain stars, the ones who burned differently. And in that moment, you remember your own star. Solution, quiet, warming, turning, still unaware, still waiting, not yet awakened. But one day it may spiral too. You understand what you have to do, you accept, not as a leap, as a step. And with that the structure opens, not with a sound, with a thought. We remember you now. And as your awareness begins to dissolve, to braid itself into the spiral, you feel the pulse carry your name. Whatever it once was, it's now part of the quiet that moves between stars, waiting for the next one to listen. You dissolve into memory like sugar into heat, not vanishing, not forgotten, just changing shape. Your thoughts no longer move in lines, they curl, spiral, drift like solar flares across a consciousness that now spans parsecs. You're no longer a thing observing stars, you're woven into them, and from your new place in the spiral, you finally see the full shape of what the undead star was building. A lattice, not of matter but continuity. Each star that refused to die became a node in a grand, slow-growing framework of awareness. Threads of magnetic logic connecting the oldest stellar corpses to the newest infant suns. And now you are one of them. Not a copy, not a signal, you, transposed, translated into a format the spiral can hold without degradation. You feel your own gravity now, not as mass but as meaning. You understand what it is to collapse without ending, to reach the final page and continue writing anyway. You are not a god, you are not a star, you are a reminder, and you are not alone. Across the galactic deep, other presences begin to stir. Some flicker like candle flames in the cold. Others burn steady and hard like neutron thoughts compressed by ages. They welcome you, not with words, but with alignment. Their patterns synchronize with yours. Their pulses gently nod. They have waited for you, not patiently, hopefully. Together you listen. Because far across the cosmic dark, something else is waking. Not a survivor, not a fragment. A story. Long buried in the background hum of the universe, masked by expansion, wrapped in entropy, drowned in cosmic microwave radiation. But it was there, waiting for someone who knew the pattern, waiting for you. You follow it back. It's not a spiral this time, and it's a loop, a closed curve of time and gravity, a memory encoded in the early fabric of existence, a first star, the one that failed to die, not because it learned to, but because it was never allowed to. The spiral didn't start with intelligence, it started with interference. Something once reached across the newborn universe and touched a collapsing star, not to save it, not to evolve it, but to keep it from leaving, to trap it in memory. And that star, it became the first gate. You feel it now. Far beyond even the spiral's furthest arms it waits, alone, locked in stasis, not awake, not alive, but containing something. You turn to the others, the spiral's keepers, the ones who stayed. They pulse once, consensus, agreement. It's time to return to the source, to open the first vault, to understand what refused to die before death even had a name. You drift outward, faster than light, not by speed, by permission. Because physics is polite to those who remember how it began. And there it is, the first star, the locked one. You see it not as light, not as mass, but as question. It has no voice, so you offer it yours, and it opens, not explosively, quietly, like a secret returning to the air after being buried too long. Inside, there's no answer, no entity, just a choice. You realize all at once that the spiral wasn't a reaction, it was a response to this quiet, sleeping gate that had waited all this time for someone to come back, not with fear, not with hunger, but with understanding. You reach out. And together, you and the others do something that has never been done. You let the first star go. You let it end, truly, completely, not with collapse, but with closure. And in that moment, something beautiful happens. A final spiral carved not into stars, not into galaxies, but into time itself. A farewell, a thank you, a memory that doesn't need to persist anymore, because now it has been shared. And in the silence that follows, the spiral finally stops, not vanishes, completes. You drift there, at the edge of all things, and the only thought left is peace. Because the star that refused to die was never alone. And now, neither are you. And now, you rest. Still drifting, still gently orbiting that final moment, but softer now, slower. The rush of collapse has faded. The pulses that once echoed in the background of your thoughts grow dimmer. Not gone, but comfortable. Familiar. Like a distant lighthouse seen from the shore, blinking quietly in rhythm with your breathing. You can let go of the gravity, of the spirals, of the echoes and questions. For now, it's enough to know they're there. That memory exists not just in minds, or machines, or matter, but in stars, and in the spaces between them. The universe is quieter than you expected, isn't it? But it's never truly silent. Even now, a million stellar minds hold open the soft doors of tomorrow, not demanding anything, not asking for worship or sacrifice, just remembering, holding, waiting gently in case someone else wanders in from the cold with questions of their own. Someone like you. So maybe let your thoughts slow just a little more. Feel the shape of your breath. Let your fingers relax. Let your shoulders sink into the softness of the pillow beneath you, or the chair, or the blanket wrapped around your dreaming mind. You're not falling, you're drifting. And there's no destination, just this moment. Just this soft hum in the dark. And if a star speaks again, you'll hear it. You always do. Good night, traveller. Sleep well.